Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McKay, we're sitting in the very same hearing room where the hearings were held to investigate the sinking of the Titanic. At that time, we had a ship supposedly so technologically advanced that it could not sink. And here we have a rig that the industry has told us so many times is so technologically advanced it supposedly could not spill. Unfortunately, despite these claims, both technological marvels ended in tragedy. And when I look at this tragedy, it's not only, of course, the loss of those lives, which we lament, and the enormous damage being done to the Gulf region, but I look at BP's response here. On page 7-1 of BP's exploration plan for the lease sale in question, BP certified that it had the, quote, capability to respond to a worst-case discharge resulting from the activities proposed in our exploration plan. But what I see is a company not prepared to address a worst-case scenario, but a company that is flailing around trying whatever they think of next to try to deal with the worst-case scenario that you all had the ability to do. And you seem to be jumping from action to action, which we all hope and pray can work, but that doesn't give me a sense of a plan that was ready to be implemented in a worst-case scenario. Isn't that a fair criticism?
Let me explain what we are doing. We have multiple parallel efforts at every level of this crisis. One, in the subsurface, we're drilling 2 relief wells. 2, we're working on the subsea, on the blowout preventers. We've got 8 remote-operated submarines around that blowout preventer, trying to get it to actuate. We've got containment and subsea systems that are being developed to deal with a very unique and specific situation. We have aggressive spill response on the surface that is part of the National Contingency Plan, One Gulf, and the BP response plan, which I think has worked well. We're fighting it aggressively offshore. We are using dispersion, in-situ burn, and skimming. We're protecting the shorelines with boom. We are prepared to clean up and deal with anything that gets to shore, and we're prepared to deal with the economic impacts.
Well, I appreciate your litany of what you're attempting to do, but one seems more incredible than the other. First, we had this 4-story dome trying to lower it into a spill, which I guess you couldn't all foresee, the crystallization that might take place. Then you have the oil dispersants, which in and of themselves is a challenge. And then I'm hearing of a plan that is called a junk shot, whereby garbage such as shredded tires and golf balls would be shot down the blowout preventer to clog the leak. I mean, I don't get the sense that you were truly prepared for the certification you made to the Interior Department of a worst-case scenario, and I get the sense you're making things up as you go along. Let me go to, I know that my colleague asked you about liability questions, and you said all legitimate claims. Is that was your word?
I did.
Yeah, and I don't get the sense that you are necessarily quantifying what a legitimate claim is or defining what a legitimate claim is, which makes me nervous. Do you have a problem with raising the liability cap on the legislation that I proposed to $10 billion?
I have not had a chance to look at any legislative proposals and understand.
Well, very simply, you have a $75 million liability cap. You say that you're going to pay all legitimate claims. I think it's pretty reasonable to understand that $75 million is not going to reach the amount that is going to be conducted in damages here. So do you have a problem? I mean, you earned $5.6 billion in the last quarter alone. Do you and an industry have a problem with a $10 billion cap?
As I said, I can't comment right now on the legislation or the $10 billion. What I can comment on is I've made it clear, and our CEO has made it clear, we are going to pay all legitimate claims. The $75 million does not come into account. And we've been as clear as we can be on this incident about that.
Well, are you going to shift those legitimate claims to the liabilities that we see in your testimony when you talk about you know, Deepwater Horizon, and when you talk about, they talk about Halliburton, is this going to be a liability chase where all of those people harmed are going to have to wait and file and go as they did in the Exxon Valdez all the way up? Is that what you intend to do?
We've made it clear we're going to deal with the people and the communities that are affected directly. We've made that clear.
One last question, Mr. Chairman. BP's lease at Deepwater Horizon received a categorical exclusion from the NEPA process last year. Why would this rig not require the oversight and regulation mandated under our country's most important environmental legislation? How could such an inherently dangerous activity not undergo through the environmental review of that process?
You're asking me?
Yes.
The exclusion you're referring to is essentially when the lease sale is done, there's an environmental impact statement that's done with the lease sale. Then there are grid environmental assessments that are done for areas within that lease sale. Those are utilized as the environmental assessments for wells that are drilled in those areas, and that's what we use, and that's a common industry practice, and it's also used, well, it's MMS regulated.
Well, it seems to me it's a common industry practice we've got to review. Mr. Chairman, I have a series of other questions. I'll submit them for the record.